Hi guys, this is QAShahin, and in this video we are going to look at Jenkins CLI. So for this video we're going to look at what Jenkins CLI is and why you would want to use it. We're going to look at some setup that's needed to get Jenkins CLI working, as well as some example commands. Also, additionally, if you would like to follow the blog post instead, where I've got the same commands up there and running, then you can do that as well. It should make it a little bit easier if you wish to copy paste things instead. So let's start looking at trying to set up Jenkins CLI, and then we will look through some example commands. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually navigate to my Jenkins dashboard. Now I am already running Jenkins in a terminal. I'm just running the WAR file. If you're not familiar how to do this, then I would advise you to watch the very first Jenkins video in this video series, which goes through setting up Jenkins initially. So now that I'm on my Jenkins, I am just going to log in, which then takes me to the dashboard. So before we do CLI, let's quickly talk about what CLI is in this respect. So far, as part of this video series, what we've been doing is creating jobs via this new item here. We've been configuring jobs, and we've sort of been seeing how to use these jobs to run tests across a set schedule using something like cron scheduler. And all of that's great, but the downside to everything we've done so far is you need to use the UI to do it. And sometimes that could be seen as a slow process. There are clearly people out there who may prefer to do this over a command line interface instead. Why? Well, they might find it easier, they might find it quicker. There are a number of reasons. It is also sensible to assume that sometimes you just may not have access to this UI for whatever reason, whether it's a network issue or whether it's a bandwidth issue, whatever it is. And sometimes using CLI is just a better alternative to using the Jenkins GUI interface. So that's sort of the main advantages of using CLI. So let's go ahead and actually set this up. Before we do that, there's a couple of quick things we need to do, because this is going to make CLI a little bit easier. So the first thing we need to do is go to Manage Jenkins and go to Configure Global Security. And for the purpose of this video, we're just going to ensure that anyone can do anything radio button is selected under authorization. The reason why we want to do this is to ensure when someone remotely tries to connect to Jenkins via some command line interface, they're able to do so. This will also sort of help speed up this tutorial video, and it will also help to minimize any issues around authentication. Once you have this done, the next thing to do is to actually find out if you have a password set for your user. So I am currently logged in as admin, and I am just going to click on this drop down here and click on configure, and this will then take me to the configuration for this particular user. And if I scroll down, if you have any passwords set, this is probably where it's going to be set. So for the moment I don't have any value set, which means when I try to run any command on the terminal, I shouldn't really be asked for any passwords. If you are, then this is the place where you get that value for that password. Now, with both of these two things done, let's actually try to go and set up Jenkins CLI. So to do this, we're just going to go back to Jenkins and then Manage Jenkins, and we are going to click on Jenkins CLI. And when we do that, we are actually given a host of options that we can run as part of the CLI, as well as a location to download the CLI jar. To run Jenkins in CLI, you need to run it just like you run the WAR file, which is to download this jar and run it as a jar via Java. So to do this, I am going to download this jar, And with the jar file now downloaded, what I will do is I will navigate to the directory where I downloaded it, and I'm just going to copy this into the same directory where I'm running my Jenkins from, which is in here, and just paste that in here. So with this done, I am now going to try and actually run this in a terminal window. Before we do that, let's quickly go back to the Jenkins CLI page on Jenkins. So the beauty of Jenkins CLI as far as helping goes, the page actually pretty much gives us all the information we really need. The first information we need is to actually run it, and it appears that we have this information. We say java -jar provided by the location of the Jenkins CLI.jar -s, and then the location of where we are running Jenkins, followed by some command. In this case, it is help. So let's try and do that. So I am going to open up a new terminal. And what I'm going to do firstly is navigate to the directory where I downloaded Jenkins. So that should be inside the documents folder, which we are already in, and then inside the Jenkins folder. So if I do an ls here, then I can see that we have both Jenkins war file as well as the Jenkins CLI jar. So to run this, I am going to say java -jar and then Jenkins CLI and then -s, and then the location where I'm actually running my Jenkins host. Followed by help, which is the command that the Jenkins CLI page suggested we run. Okay, so what has happened? So firstly, let's scroll up a bit. So what's happened is we are now running Jenkins CLI via the hosted Jenkins, which is currently running on port 8080, followed by a command, in this case help. And what this did was, if I break this down, we run the Jenkins CLI, we tell it where our instance of Jenkins is running, and then we provide a command for that. So if we have a look, it is giving us a list of a number of different commands that we can use for Jenkins. So let's go ahead and actually try to use some of these commands. So the first command that I think I'd like to use is probably to do something like listing all my current jobs. So if we have a look, there is actually a command that can be used to list all the jobs that are available for my hosted Jenkins instance. So if I do that, and instead of now saying help, if I say something like list jobs, which is an existing command, this will then list all the jobs that I have in Jenkins. Let's have a look and see if there are any other commands that we may want to use. So if I look up, then I can see there are jobs such as to copy an existing job, to create a job. Let's see if there's an option to build something. So it looks like we do have an option of building a job, which is the same as saying running a job. Now we did just list all of our existing jobs. So I can say something like build. And in this case, I would assume that I provide a job name. But let's say for a moment that I don't know what I'm actually supposed to provide. If I just hit enter, then this actually tells me what sort of parameters I should be expected to pass as part of that build command. And in this case, we can see that when you run the build command, you can pass in a job as well as all of these other values. And in this case, job is referring to the name of a job. So really quickly, let's list the jobs again. And this time we're going to say build and then say something like Selenium demo and just hit enter. And what this should have done is actually started the build. So let's quickly go back and see if the Selenium job is actually running. And it looks like it did. It actually opened up a browser and it closed it, which is evidence that it did actually kick off a Jenkins job. So without going into too much more detail, this is sort of what you can do, the power you have by running Jenkins in CLI. So what have we learned in this video? So in this video, we looked at how to set up Jenkins CLI, and we looked at the benefits you would get by using CLI over GUI. GUI is certainly easier to use, but it isn't necessarily quicker to use. Once you get used to using Jenkins CLI, that can arguably be a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, and certainly more developer friendly, especially if you prefer to use things from the terminal. That way you don't really have to navigate to any GUI, you don't have to go through pages, you just simply type in a command and you go with it from there. It's certainly a lot more easier to script as well for those really script heavy junkies out there. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.